Okay. Let's just briefly regenerate our motivation in this session. Just think about, yeah, whatever virtuous motivation you generated this morning or any other, and briefly generate that attitude again. You can also, it's good to remember the visualization we did, being surrounded by all sentient beings, with friends and family behind us, those we find antagonistic, seated directly in front, facing towards us, in order to especially remind us that we need to make effort to practice patience and kindness towards them. And then all the other sentient beings we have a neutral attitude towards, seated all around us. Yeah, and then generate virtuous motivation, including all of them, and especially in relation to this last session of the Meditation 101 course this weekend. Mhm. Okay. So, yeah, so then what I think we'll do is we'll go ahead and continue with this meditation that we just got started on yesterday afternoon at the end of the day. So remember yesterday, then I described attachment, the mind of attachment. So then what we essentially want to do is look for an example of that in our own experience. Remember, I said start with one that's a middling to mild example. It should be clear enough that when you recall it, you can feel what that was like again, but not so strong that then you get caught up in kind of the drama of that attachment. I mean, that you get distracted, right, from making it a kind of objective analysis and reflecting constructively on what attachment is, right? You don't want, if it's, I don't know, someone you were in love with before or something, you think of them and then all of a sudden you just start fantasizing about being with them again, then that's not really helpful, right? So it should be a middling form of attachment or something like that. So we'll meditate a bit on attachment and then compare. I'll remind you of the Buddhist description of what attachment is. Then you compare to your own experience using this very specific example. And then we'll reflect briefly on some of the antidotes to attachment. Yeah, some of the, I mean, the first among which, the antidotes of attachment, is just thinking about the drawbacks of attachment, how it doesn't fundamentally satisfy us, and how it leads us into disappointment again and again, and other problems it gives rise to. So we'll probably do that. We'll try to keep that just to 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll do the same with anger. Yeah, and then we'll take a break. I'll explain some other things, and then we'll do some. After a little while, we'll do some meditation on positive emotions. Okay. Okay. So let's do a short meditation on attachment and then anger. So first, just as you get comfortable in your meditation posture, bring your focus your awareness within, and then focus your mind on an object of placement meditation, your breath or the nature, clear knowing nature of your mind, or another object of placement meditation for a minute or so, just to clear the mind and focus one's attention. Mm. And then remember an instance of attachment, of being attached to something. It could be another person or an inanimate object like food or, some drugs or alcohol, or could be to a specific place or to praise or reputation or approval. It can be many different things, right? So, yeah, in your own experience, looking at your past, recent past or distant past, find a clear example that you can vividly recall, kind of imagine or recall what it was like to feel that again, but you can also have some space from that and look at it objectively in a kind of neutral way without being overcome by that emotion again. So yeah, recall one instance like that, and then as you recall it, recall kind of briefly the whole story of how it arose. Recall a time, once you identify your example, then recall a time before you felt attachment towards that object, and then how, as best you can, how attachment arose, and then imagine being in the full kind of sway of that emotion again and how that felt, and especially, clearly identify the object that you're attached to and how the object appeared to that mind. Okay, so spend a couple minutes looking at that. Mm. And then remember, so that some aspects of this Buddhist description of attachment, and we compare to our own experience to see if they seem true or not. The first is, well, as with any afflictive emotion, when it arises in the mind, it disturbs the peace of the continuum. So if we imagine, the basic nature of the mind, it's clear and knowing, and it's kind of like water. When it's undisturbed, then it naturally, the surface becomes very smooth and flat. and calm. But then afflictive emotions are like wind blowing the surface, or like a stone thrown into, disturbing the surface of the calm, disturbing the calm of the water. So is this instance of attachment you're looking at, is it like that? When it arises in your mind, does it disturb the peace of your continuum, and how? In what way? And then secondly, does it, so attachment is described as a mind that observes exclusively the attractive aspects of its object. So it doesn't see anything unattractive about the object, sees just something attractive and then exaggerates that, and then believes that attractiveness to exist from the side of the object as a property existing, as a truly as a property of the object, and not having at all to do with one's own opinion or projection from the side of one's own mind. So does your instance of attachment match that, or not? Does the object appear as attractive? Does attachment exclusively perceive attractive aspects? Does it exaggerate those? And does it see those as existing from the side of the object, and not from the side of oneself, the observer, or one's own mind? Mm. And then another aspect of attachment, sort of a final set of aspects of attachment, is that it goes along with this kind of unrealistic belief or expectation that this object, if I have it, if I can enjoy it in the way I want, then that will make me happy. Right? That this object can give me happiness and satisfaction. And that if I'm not able to have and enjoy this object in the way I want, then I'll suffer. Then I won't be able to be happy without that object. So does that also kind of seem accurate about the example of attachment you're looking at in your own experience? Mm. So then, having looked at these aspects of attachment and how it functions, then that itself kind of shows us uh, different antidotes to attachment. So we'll kind of work backwards, applying antidotes. So we can start with, attachment has it goes along with this expectation, this unrealistic expectation, that if I can have or enjoy the object of it, my attachment in the way I want, that will make me happy and bring me satisfaction. So one antidote is we can look at past instances of, when we were able to follow our attachment and get what we wanted. Did that always make us happy and satisfy us, especially in the long term? Did it kind of give us the happiness and satisfaction we'd hoped? So generally, we can see how often, even we get what we want, it's not what we thought it would be. Right? It's not as satisfying as we thought. There's disappointment. So is that the case in your experience? Mm. So remembering this can help us see how, a current instance of attachment is has an unrealistic expectation that the object can satisfy us. So that can be sobering. And then another antidote mm, is contentment, just being content without this object of attachment. So is it the case, because one aspect of attachment is that if we feel as if I'm not able to follow my attachment and get what I want, then I'll be unhappy. Kind of like, if we have like a fungal infection between our toes or somewhere, or like poison oak, something that we feel like we need to itch it, we need to scratch it. There's a strong urge. And if we don't, like, you know, it'll be really uncomfortable. But yet, if we do, it actually makes it worse, right? There's a temporary kind of relief, but then it gets worse. And if we don't scratch it, then the urge to scratch it or itch it, it goes away gradually and we feel okay. So, yeah, the question is, can we be content without this object of attachment? If I just let go of the need to have or enjoy, be conjoined with this object as I wish, can I be happy and content and have satisfaction without that? Mm. And then a final antidote of attachment is because attachment looks at exclusively attractive aspects of its object. So another very obvious antidote is to look at unattractive aspects of the object. So whatever your object of attachment is, with wisdom or reason. Think about, different unattractive, unpleasant aspects of that object, not in a way that's like belittling or kind of unfairly negative, but just to see the whole reality of that object and to help dispel this kind of fantasy view of the object of attachment. Yeah, so take a minute or two and think about unattractive aspects of the object of attachment in your example. Mm, okay, so then relax your attention just for a minute or two, and then we'll meditate on anger. Okay, so let's resume. Mm. So basically, we'll do the same meditation just with anger, and yeah, I won't give as much guidance, and so try to see for yourself how much you can recall the different steps. I'll give a little less explanation of each step, and try to see for yourself how much you can recall of the different steps of the meditation. So the first again is to yeah, come back to your breath, focus the mind a bit, and then recall an instance of becoming angry, irritated, angry about something. Again, a middling kind of example, one that you can remember clearly and kind of feel clearly again as you recall, but it doesn't kind of hijack your mind. You can still look at objectively. And then again, recall how it arose, um, how it first arose, how that felt as it arose in your body and mind, up to when it was, fully developed emotion, and how that felt, and then especially what was the object of the anger, and how did that mind of anger perceive its object. So just do that for a few minutes. And then remember, features of anger are that it sees something unattractive, unpleasant, or kind of, yeah, revolting about the object, something negative about the object, and then exaggerates that, exclusively sees that, exaggerates that, and perceives that to be truly a property of the object, not, not at all, not to any degree, a projection of one's own mind, that the object of our anger really is like that from the side of the object. So does that fit your example or your experience or not? How or how not? Mm. And then finally, aspect of anger is wanting to harm the object, to be separated from, push it away, make it stop existing, destroy it, or to retaliate and cause harm to the object of anger. And there's a perception that the object of my anger, it has, if I don't kind of push it away, destroy it, be separated from it, it will destroy my happiness. It has the power to destroy my happiness. So does that seem true in your example? And then another aspect, just a final one, is that anger arises from attachment and is fundamentally selfish, a self-centered or selfish concern. Right? So anger arises from attachment and is fundamentally concerned with oneself. Does that seem true or not? Mm. So then applying antidotes to anger, meditating on some antidotes to anger. Um, One is just to see how anger destroys our own happiness. Right? How when we're in a moment we're angry, we cannot be happy in that moment. It makes it really disturbs our own mind, such that it separates us from any joy or enjoyment or happiness. And it disturbs our own mind. It leads us into engaging, saying things that we later regret, engaging in actions that are harmful to others, which we later, typically we later feel ashamed of or have to apologize for. Um, and it has a detrimental effect on our physical health, right? It makes us physically feel uncomfortable. Yeah. And we can't enjoy, we can't sleep well. We can't enjoy being in other people's company, can't enjoy things we ordinarily would enjoy doing. How anger really destroys, undermines our own ability to enjoy anything, to be happy. So just reflect on that as an antidote, causing us to wish to reduce and eliminate this way of reacting. Mm. And then another antidote to anger, or set of antidotes, is because anger exclusively looks at the unattractive or negative aspects of its object, is to look at the positive sides of the object, attractive aspects, characteristics of the object. And then also looking at those also to wish well, to especially in relation to another person we're angry at, to generate loving kindness for them, the wish that they be happy and well, because anger wishes to harm. So the love is diametrically opposed to anger because it wishes someone to be well and happy. The same with anger towards ourself can generate love towards ourselves as antidote. So these two are a nice pair together, looking at attractive aspects of the object of our anger and then wishing for that object to be well, happy, and whole. Yeah. So try that out, see if that seems helpful. Mm. So then, with this, having done this, so thinking about the future now. So to make this exercise more helpful, think about a future situation that might arise where there's a danger, you get angry. Looking at the past, we can see patterns, we can make good prediction. When we meet this person or in this situation or this happens, then I tend to get angry. So thinking about the future situation where there's some probability we get angry, some possibility. Then try to imagining, encountering that situation and then applying your newly acquired understanding of anger and antidotes to anger. So the main antidotes to anger are seeing the drawbacks of anger, how harmful it is to us, then having kind of the determination to be patient, to endure things with patience and not respond with anger. And then also having a mind of loving kindness, maintaining a wish to benefit, irregardless of how someone else treats me. Trying to maintain the wish yeah, to not harm and rather to benefit them. So try to, imagine a future situation where the danger you get angry, and then practicing patience and loving kindness in place of becoming irritated and getting angry. Just for a couple minutes. Try to imagine that. Okay. And then similarly with attachment, imagine a situation in the future that you might encounter where you're likely to give rise to attachment to something or someone, and then reflecting on what you know now. How can you, instead of reacting to that situation with attachment, how can you practice like seeing the faults of attachment, practicing contentment with what we already have, not longing for something more, seeing that it's not fundamentally satisfying. And then also recognizing how attachment engages this object in a distorted way, exclusively seeing the pleasant and exaggerating that. So how we can kind of modify that by remembering the faulty aspects, unattractive aspects of the object. So we can try to imagine how we'd apply those two antidotes in the future. Okay, so relax your attention there. So we'll end that meditation there. Um, yeah, so I'd like to hear from you all. What any feedback? What did you find? Did you find something helpful, or have some insight on those things, or are there, or what questions kind of arose? And especially, do you feel like, that would be helpful in the future? Like you could use that, some aspects of that meditation in the future.
Geshe, thank you very much. I found that when I meditated on attachment and I tried to let go, actually, sorry, when I meditated on anger, the antidote, when I applied loving kindness, there was a light question in my mind. When I apply loving kindness, I end up exaggerating some of the qualities of the person, which means then I become attached.
Mm,
So so then I got confused.
I see.
So,
Well, loving kindness, yeah, is just wishing for the person to be well.
yes.
But then, yeah, if in the course of doing that, see positive things about the person and then exaggerate those. Yeah, I don't know. Then, I mean, usually, either way, when we exaggerate like negative aspects or positive aspects of a person, the way to balance that is always just think about the other side, right?
Mm,
So in the case of loving kindness, I mean, that thinking, exaggerating the positive aspects of the person is something beyond loving kindness, right? Loving kindness is just the wish that that person be well and happy, right?
mm,
It doesn't entail any kind of um, kind of perception of their positive, negative qualities. Because ideally, we want loving kindness to be, what do you say? That's the attitude we have towards a person, irregardless of what we think about them
Right.
or whatever we see
Right.
about them.
Right.
It's unconditional. It's not conditional on what we see about them. It's more like we practice that intent, having that intention, that attitude towards a person, because that's how we want to be. Because we want to be a kind person. We want to be someone who wishes well upon others, for many reasons. But it's more dependent upon, well, what's the attitude that I want to have towards that person? Doesn't depend on anything about that person, right? So then if it's getting caught up in a story about, well, actually, when I have that attitude towards them, I'm exaggerating their positive qualities. That's something else, right? That's like kind of another level of elaboration, right? And then, but the way to balance that out is we'll think about other negative qualities and then just, yeah, have a more kind of whole picture of the person, that's balanced. Yeah.
Thank you.
What about online people, our online audience? Did you have was that helpful or any questions arose?
Very helpful. Always for me, it comes back to that I do not want to be so controlled by things outside of me. I just don't. And when I do those meditations, I'm reminded again and again that when I think I need to get away from something or get closer to something in order to be happy, it just doesn't work that way. It's just not logical, actually. And I guess sitting alone in the middle of nowhere for a long time and finding out that the suffering really did come from my own mind was very helpful for me. Because now when I do those meditations, it is a very visceral experience of, wow, I really think I won't be happy unless I have that. That's ridiculous, actually. It's totally ridiculous. Anyway, that's my
Yeah, I
feedback.
agree. Over time, it becomes clearer and clearer, and to see that clearly becomes easier and easier when you take the time to sit down and think about it. No.
Yeah.
It's very empowering, actually. It's very empowering.
Yeah. Yeah, I find one of the most kind of insidious aspects of afflictive emotions is that when they arise, even though you've studied about them, you know the antidotes, you just can't apply them. They kind of fog your mind and kind of cut you off from that wisdom that you actually have, no? And then, so it's really important to practice those antidotes when you're in a good space before afflictive emotions arise.
I think it was interesting how activating it was, even though you can have time and distance from an actual emotion. And then it helps me find a little more compassion for when I am in a space where I'm activated, because even if months or years have gone by from, one of those emotions, I can still recall it so easily. And I think I have a little more understanding of how being in the thick of it makes it even more of a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. We need to generate compassion for ourselves, seeing how much we are a victim of our own like habitual emotional patterns. And really, when they're in the thick of it, I mean, we can generate a compassion for ourselves and also compassion for others. No, that really helps when we see others become angry at us or others caught up in attachment or some other afflictive emotion related to us or someone else. How, yeah, it really you're really not a free agent in that state. You're really under the control of kind of habitual emotional patterns that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Soren, how did you find it? You haven't said much this course yet. Haven't heard from you.
It's correct. It's more, as I said initially on the Friday, right? It's to me very early and beginning stages of everything and realizing how much more work there is to do. Anger is definitely one big part. I mean, it's part of my daily evening practice that I do, and just going through it. But similar to before, I mean, it's that fine line of dealing with it, but then also not falling onto the other side of not having compassion for oneself and things of that nature, right? Like trying to find that middle way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a continual process to kind of go back and forth, explore. But yeah, it's very important to do exactly what you're doing. See, what is it, the strongest afflictive emotion that I'm troubled by? And then really regularly practice dealing, working with that, remembering different instances of it, just like we've been doing. And like you start with weaker instances, and then when you become more comfortable and you feel like you know how to do that meditation, then you work at the more and more difficult instances of anger, because we're all triggered by different things, different people, different situations. So as you build up the power of these antidotes and our understanding, our skill in using antidotes, then you try to use them in relation to more and more difficult situations that trigger us. Yeah. And then hopefully, yeah, we should see some progress, right? I mean, it's also important to keep learning, right? Drawing on different resources, reading different books, listening to different teachers explain different ways, and then trying that out in our practice. But over time, we should see like the afflictive emotions, like I was saying earlier, progress means that they don't arise as often as they did before. When they do arise, they don't arise as strongly as they did before. And when they arise, even when they arise strongly, they don't remain in our mind as long. We recover from it more quickly. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully we can see that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing, Soren. Yes, Tommy?
Yeah, with anger, it's kind of it's like revelatory for me to place people in front of me that I'm angry with during, visualizing them in front of me, looking at me, changes a lot of things. Where before I've always kind of put them behind me and kind of, you forget how angry you could be with certain people with certain things. And having them in front of me and looking at me brings that compassion towards them more vividly for me. And then, while I was meditating on it, I just realized there are some things that I thought I was over, that I have lost the anger over, but it's still there below the surface and it's easily stirred up with certain people, conversations. And then, afterwards I feel bad because I've just pretty much gossiped about a situation that I thought I was over already, for many years. And so it's eye-opening in that respect. And with the meditation on attachment, I just realized how many things I am attached to. It's endless. I mean, and so there's that whole thing that I'm working on presently, to kind of not to rid myself of everything, but just to not to be so compulsive on buying so many, this or that, and having so many books or having so many clothes in my closet, or it's just one of those things that I'm working on personally, just that I know will be helpful for me in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's very helpful. Yeah. There's a whole kind of movement. I mean, that reminds me in these days in the US, like the minimalist. There's this book by these two guys, the minimalists, and then there's movies, and there's, what is it? Mary Kondo, this Japanese consultant, get rid of things. Because, yeah, I mean, consumer culture is all about attachment, no? Yeah. Yeah. Producers of things, I mean, companies trying to convince us that we need to buy their product to be happy. And be, yeah, it's the whole culture, no? Consumer culture. Yeah, thank you, Tommy. Why don't let's take a 10-minute break now. Yeah, and then we can continue. Okay, let's resume now. The online people are much more tame, no? The people here in the center is a bit more it's like a bit more like herding cats. I do, yeah. I want you to socialize within the time limits. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So before, as we get started again, I just want to, recommend these two good resources for, especially for those who are newly meditating on things. Like, especially like this meditation we just did on anger and attachment. It's not in the handouts from these courses. I just decided to do that, but they're definitely here. So this is one resource, this How to Meditate by Kathleen McDonald. And then she has a sequel to that. This was published probably like 30 years ago or so. It's quite old. It's one of the first books I used. How to Meditate by Kathleen McDonald. And then she just has a sequel to this. I think it's called How to Meditate on the Lam Rim. Just came out like earlier, within the last year or so. So I recommend both of those. The other sequel is How to Meditate on the Lam Rim, and by the same woman, Kathleen McDonald. She's a nun, actually. Her ordained name is Sangha Kadro. She's from California, actually, I believe. She's a very senior nun in our kind of organization. And then the other, I'll share my screen now. I can, yeah, is by another very senior nun. What is her name here? Yeah, Karen Valham. She's from Sweden. Annie Karen, usually call her. And she's been teaching at Kopan Monastery in Nepal for like almost 50 years, I think, 40, 50 years. Teaching Introduction to Buddhism course, like a 10-day Introduction to Buddhism course again and again. That's where I took my first really extensive introduction to Buddhism was from Annie Karen. I consider her one of my teachers. So over the years, she's developed this Lam Rim Outlines. It's called A Beginner's Guide to Meditation. And this, I believe, you can download for free from the FPMT website. FPMT is the name of this broader organization the center is a part of, called the Foundation for the Preservation of Mahayana Tradition. And so FPMT, they have a website, and in there they have a shop. And there's many, many texts you can download for free from there. And this is one of them. And it's very excellent. I mean, when I first used this probably 25 years ago, Lam Rim Outlines, Beginner's Meditation Guide by Karen Valham. And but I was looking at it just earlier this year, and she's improved it a lot. She's added to it and developed it. It's really excellent. Kind of outlines on the different topics that I was saying in the Lam Rim. And then two other resources. One, there's a commentary, a book by His Holiness. It's very small here, called Illuminating the Path to Enlightenment. This is a commentary he gave in Los Angeles, actually, like 20 years ago or so, on the Lam Rim. And so it's, His Holiness advice. It follows the traditional kind of outlines and has very contemporary advice. And this is also, I believe, available for free download from Wisdom publications. Maybe we can send out in an email or something later. Well, actually, it's probably better you download, because I'm sure that they'd prefer that, because then you might make a donation or something to both those organizations. They run on donations. So. Or $0, I think. You can download for free, or you can make anything. So, yeah. And then, so that's one. And then there's two other things you can download for free. These are both from the FPMT website. So maybe I'll start with this one. The Foundation of All Good Qualities is a Lam Rim prayer that is very commonly recited in daily practice. So this kind of is a way of briefly reviewing all of the main topics of contemplation that are most helpful. So yeah, there's that. The Foundation of All Good Qualities by Jetsun Kappa. Also available for free download from the FPMT website, as is this prayer called the Three Principal Aspects of the Path. And so many people like recite, and contemplate on one of these one day and then the other day. But the way you'd use it is like, you recite the whole prayer, and then come back to the verse, one of the verses. like here, the first verse is on relying upon a spiritual teacher. But the second verse is like thinking about our precious human life. And then third verse is about impermanence and death. So, and then you can meditate like on one of those topics for like a week or so, and then add to inform your meditation with reading from other resources. Yeah, so these two texts are good to know about, or these different texts. Foundation of All Qualities, Three Principal Aspects of the Path, Illuminating the Path to Enlightenment, and the Lamrim Outlines by Annie Karen, and then How to Meditate by by Kathleen McDonald. Yeah. Okay. So then during lunch, someone asked me to speak more about anxiety, how to use meditation to reduce anxiety and also depression, because those are such two common emotional or mental kind of health problems that more and more people face, and they're becoming, more prevalent in society. Yeah, so I was very happy to hear that request and that suggestion. We talk more about that. Yeah. So yeah, anxiety. Well, anxiety is kind of fear. No, Rochelle asked earlier about fear in general, and anxiety is kind of fear about something that might happen in the future. Generally, like, typical kind of anxiety I think people have is when we have a lot of responsibilities. There's a lot of things we're going to be held accountable for. Like for a student in school, you're taking different courses, and you have to write a paper for one, prepare for an exam for another, do reading assignments for another, make sure you attend, class, and also do well, not just do those things, but do them well so that you get good grades. And there's a fear that if I don't turn in the assignment, if I don't prepare for the exam, if I don't do the reading, then I'll get poor grades. If I don't get good grades, I won't be able to get in the school I want to. And then when you're, university or graduate school, and then if I don't get good grades, I won't have a good resume, then I won't be able to get a good job. And then, I'll end up with a PhD and serving coffee at Starbucks or something like that. And kind of feel like a failure myself and be looked at by others as a failure, and not be able to find, a partner, a romantic partner that I like to, or not be able to buy a house, and, end up homeless, or, or worse. So there's it's a kind of fear, I think, a lot of anxiety. That's a bit extreme story, but another is more just like, if we're, in a work situation, we're anxious about, there's a lot of job instability. And especially the last few years in the marketplace, especially with the rise of AI. And there's, the kind of pace of everything in the world, with the pace of developing technology, especially like IT technology, like in Silicon Valley, things changing so quickly, career pathways are much less predictable than before. And that's a fact of life. And so with that comes, a lot of fear. What's going to happen to my company? Is it going to be sold? Is it going to be out, kind of, what do you say? Outsourced. Yeah, outsourced is I used to spend a lot of time in Bangalore, and from time to time I'd meet people from Silicon Valley or Bay Area or other tech hubs around the world, and they said, I'm here to like outsource my job, or many jobs in my company. Bangalore is a term apparently, to outsource jobs. Yeah, my job got Bangalored. Yeah, yeah. It's a real term. People will tell me that, because so many jobs used to get outsourced to different companies in Bangalore. All the major IT companies have offices in Bangalore. Yeah, so there's a lot of instability. And then, I mean, instability in the job market. There's political, this and the politics in the U.S. is more divisive. The kind of conversations and suggestions and things being done in terms of the government that we'd never, I never imagined would see in my lifetime are now, happening day to day. So that causes a lot of anxiety. And then also the environment. I mean, the global environment with climate destruction, global warming. We never imagined, when I was young, I never imagined that human activity, burning fossil fuels and, dumping plastics into the waterways and so forth, would ever accumulate to the kind of effects that we see now, where, it's dramatically changing weather patterns in different places. So yeah, all of that. There's so many sources of anxiety. And then also the information revolution, where the internet, because I'm 50, what am I, 52 now? Yeah, I'm 52. I grew up without smartphones, without the internet. Even when I went to college, we just used an internal, had computers. The college had a lot of computer centers we could use to write papers and stuff and send messages with other students on the network or professors, but it was just internal thing. It wasn't a worldwide, web. That only came about after I graduated from college. But now we have information from all corners of the world, instantly. And I mean, people who are making money on selling information, they want to distribute information that grabs people's attention, right? They want to hold our attention. And the kind of information that holds people's attention is bad news, right? Is scary information or traumatic information or dramatic information. There's this incredible threat. You have to know about it because that's what stimulates our nervous system in a very, we're evolutionarily designed to be more aware of threats than we are aware of things that sustain us, right? Positive information that sustains us. Because if we're not aware of a threat, that could be the end of our life. If we're not aware of some bush that has a lot of berries, we'll find another one, right? So the way we consume information and the kind of information that's distributed for our consumption also causes a lot of anxiety that we didn't have before we had so much access to so much information, right? So that's another source of anxiety. Yeah. So then how to deal with that? How to use meditation to help reduce anxiety? Well, one aspect, the kind of meditation we learned about in this course initially, just doing breathing, focusing on doing placement meditation, focusing on the breath, focusing on the conventional nature of our mind. The mind is clear and knowing. Like using the example, the mind is like an ocean. Anxiety is like part of the waves on the surface, and learning to be more in touch with and identify, just this fundamental nature of our mind, to be aware of objects, and kind of bring the focus of our attention down below the surface. That helps, just to center our attention and feel more centered and then relaxed. But then, as the person asking the question said, but what do you do when you come out of meditation and then you go back to normal life? You look at your phone again, you go to work again, you have to drive again, and you have to face all the realities of life. How do you not get anxious again, right? How do you react to all those things? Yeah. One thing, there are a few different pieces of advice that might help. One is just like the way we worked with attachment and anger in this last meditation, where we try to get a better understanding of like what are each of those. So with the anxiety also, we can, in our meditation, think of a instance or a situation that we face regularly that triggers us to be more anxious, that gives rise to our anxiety in our mind stream. And then recognize the causal story. How does that anxiety arise? So recognize a time before we weren't anxious, then we come into contact with this trigger. Maybe it's looking at news on the phone, maybe it's encountering someone at work, maybe it's thinking about a particular situation, personal relationship or something, whatever. Or the larger, like, looking at, reading about the climate change and the latest developments in that, which are always, well, not always, but there's a lot of bad news. Yeah. So whatever triggers us, then look at how do I encounter that? How does it affect my mind? What are the thoughts that arise in my mind in relation to that cause me to start feeling anxious? What are the physiological symptoms that I'm becoming anxious? What do I feel? Do I have pain in my neck, or, do my breath become short, or do I start clenching my fists, or what? Because all those, the more we know about how anxiety is triggered and arises within us, the more we get control over our response. So so start that way. Look at what are the things that trigger us and how does it feel when anxiety arises. And then look at, well, what is the object of the mind of anxiety for me? What are the primary objects that I observe and that cause me to become anxious? And then how is my mind engaging with that object? How am I perceiving the object? And what are the thoughts that arise in relation to that object? And how realistic are those, or is there some distortion there? Am I exaggerating the degree to which that could cause me harm? Or am I exaggerating the ill that could come of that? But that's a hard question, because a lot of the issues I just described, and I think this is why they give rise to so much anxiety, especially these days, is there's so many variables, it's so unpredictable. It's really difficult to know, because we've never been in it, like with climate change and global warming. We've never been in a situation where we're dumping so much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that it's unknown. I mean, as much as scientists do different studies and take different measures, nobody really knows, and all the tipping points. At what point does the Greenland ice sheet just collapse, or, some part of the Antarctic ice sheet, and, and what is it? The North Atlantic, the current, that carries water all around the Atlantic Ocean, that fuels the jet stream. At what point does that just not work and then causes radical, weather patterns to change radically? We don't know. So that's part of the unknown, right? Is a big part of the source of anxiety. So that undermines the ability of the antidote, right? To judge, well, am I being unrealistically afraid? Or, because if you don't know, then what's your barometer, right? With anger and attachment, you're a bit more grounded. But when there's so many unknowns, it's a bit hard to gauge. Is my fear realistic, or is it blown out of proportion? But maybe another antidote, I mean, for me, what comes to mind when I think of that is to recognize, well, what do I have control over? Because I think another part of anxiety, because we know about what's happening in so many corners of the world, and we want to do something to resolve the problems in those different sectors. But so often, there's not much we can do. And then I'm not trying to be say don't try to do anything. No, not that. If we feel really motivated, we can try to do something, but we should recognize how, maybe this is helpful, because a common antidote in all those anger, attachment, other afflictive emotions is to recognize how those undermine our ability to do something productive, right? So with anxiety, identify what is it that I have anxiety in relation to, and then identify how that anxiety itself, that fear itself, like I said, there's a degree of wholesome fear, but then at some point it becomes compulsive and obsessive. and unconstructive, right? Destructive. So anxiety is the same. There's, a degree of anxiety might be warranted and justified, but then at some point, it really is just detrimental to our mental health, detrimental to our physical health, and is not helping us apply our energy constructively to some kind of solution. So with whatever the object of our anxiety is, we need to it helps to the meditation, meditate, calm down, come back to a kind of clear and centered space, and then step back, look at the situation a bit more objectively, and think, well, is there something I can do? Is there some way I can be proactive? Is there some steps I can take to reduce the, the possible ill effects of what I'm afraid of? Like, what can I do, right? And hopefully there is. I mean, in most cases, there's something we can do. So it's much more constructive to apply our energy towards, even if it looks kind of like hopeless, almost like sometimes the whole climate destruction situation looks almost hopeless now. I mean, like, it's so bad. And the forces, but then when you look at, well, how much, the cost of producing solar panels has gone way down. The amount of electricity being generated by solar and wind is just, is going way up. And the general attitude have changed. Okay, so one, try to redirect our energy in a constructive way. And it's like, even if the whole ship is going down, like, we still try to do whatever we can to save ourselves, to save others, because that's what we want to do. Even though it looks like our death is like almost inevitable, well, what do we do with the last, minutes? We try to do something constructive. So that's helpful, right? And then, but then also we have to, it helps to remember, like, our negativity bias. In our psychology, negativity bias is a huge thing. And this relates to why we're so much more prone to be attracted to negative information. And remember that, when we hear one piece of negative news and then one piece of positive news, we're like 5 times more likely to remember the negative piece of news. And that really skews the way we see the world. And then, so you combine that with the kind of information we're fed, because, people who sell information know what attracts our attention, then we really have this distorted negative view of things. So it really helps to make conscientious effort to think about the whole picture in a more balanced way, and look for more independent news sources. Look for news sources that are not like, their primary interest is not profit, that are not so much for profit. And then also look for the positive stories. Make effort and remember those positive stories. Yeah. So I think, maybe we can summarize those kind of antidotes to anxiety. Coming back, finding a space in our own mind and our own practice where we feel calm and balanced. And then remembering, cultivating the skill of being able to come back to that during the day, right? Even you can just come back to your breath for a few breaths, or just close your eyes and meditate for a few moments when you feel like you're becoming tense and anxious during the day. That can help just to relax that anxiety. And then to think in a more discriminating way. Well, instead, seeing how this becoming anxious is not helpful for me, it's not helpful for others. Yes, there are things to genuinely worry about in the world, but how can I use my energy not just to kind of be on a treadmill worrying about that, but to direct my energy in a positive, in a constructive way that might be contributing towards a solution to the problems I'm worried about and the possible negative outcomes I'm worried about. And that's the second one. And then also, to look for the positive stories and remember our negativity bias and try to see a more whole, complete picture, which gives us some kind of wisdom and insight about how we might contribute something positive. So I think those are some helpful advice. I hope you try. But again, there's this is a big problem in our society, in the world these days now. So there are other people also, which I'm sure have also good ideas. How do I deal with anxiety? And then the other one is depression. We have time for depression? Yes, we do. All right, let's all try to feel depressed for 5 minutes. No. No, you're laughing. That's not, no. No, depression, I mean, depression is a serious problem in society. I think, a lot of that comes from loneliness. There's a huge correlation between loneliness and depression. And loneliness doesn't mean just that you don't see other people, but it means you don't feel connected with other people. And I think a lot of people these days don't feel connected with others. One, because they don't see many others. And then when they do see others, they don't trust them. I mean, trust has a lot to do with feeling connected. If you don't trust other people or feel like comfortable talking with people openly, then you feel lonely even in a crowd. Like there's a famous book called, I think, Alone in a Crowd, which I haven't read, but I think it's about this phenomena of loneliness in modern developed societies. Yeah. So, but I think luckily, well, loneliness is something we can quite deliberately do something to ameliorate, right? By trying to be involved in settings where we can connect with other people, like sports, playing sports or hobbies that you do together with other people, or volunteering. Charitable work is an excellent way to connect with other people. I was just heard on a radio show, an interview on the radio the other day, I thought it was very good advice. They're saying, some people are quite introverts. When you feel lonely, when you feel depressed, it's like you feel lonely and then you become depressed. Then when you become depressed, you feel more lonely. So it's a vicious circle where you kind of spiral down. And when you feel depressed, you don't feel good about yourself. So you feel embarrassed. So you feel more shy to be around other people because you don't want to see other people to see how sad you are, because they'll pick up on that, or you're afraid they'll pick up on that. And so you avoid other people, but then you feel more lonely, and then you feel more. So you really go down in kind of a black hole, right? So it really helps. Okay, one thing, I mean, talking from my own experience, because I've been depressed, at different points in my life, is and one easy way to connect with others is, well, don't connect. People might be a bit difficult to connect with because they're so complicated. Connect with an animal. No, animals are much easier because they're much more simple, right? Especially dogs. They're so kind. And I'm not a dog person. Like I had one dog because I don't know, when I was a teenager living with my parents. But you see a lot of people have difficulty connecting with other people. They feel very connected with cats and dogs and animals. So that's helpful. I mean, another is just connect with nature. Don't stay in your room like all the time. Go outside. Go take walks in parks. Go out and walk and just connect with the sun, the sky, the air, the ocean. It's so beautiful, especially a place like here. It really helps, I think, to get out of your shell. When you're depressed, I mean, one aspect of depression is this hyper self-awareness that's just too much. I mean, one part of meditation is be more aware of yourself, but that can be too much. Anything, you have to find a middle way. Anything can be an extreme, right? So where you're just too full of yourself in a way, not in an arrogant way, but in a way that like you just pay too much attention to a little drama for you seems like the whole world, no? So to step out of yourself, and a first step to doing that could just be literally go outside, go walk around your neighborhood, observe what other people are doing, read biographies about other people's lives, listen to, podcasts or stories, watch movies about other people's lives, and do things that help you realize that your own, depression is not unique to you. There's other people that feel it. Join a self-help group, where you talk with other people who are going through a similar experience in life. All those things kind of connect with other people in a constructive way. But it was that this interview was saying some people are naturally more introverted and uncomfortable just talking with other people or being the object of other people's attention, which is true. And so for people who are introverted, there was that helpful suggestion: do activities like service, like working in a food kitchen or something, where people are not paying attention to you. You're not the object of anyone's attention, but you're there working side by side with other people. So you connect, but it's not like you have to sit across the table and like talk. No, it's going to be unnerving, right? So I thought that was very good advice. Think about the kind of activities that you can engage in where you connect with other people and the way you connect with other people through that activity. And then also, yeah. But here, I mean, also, maybe it's important to note that, because I am kind of talking as if I'm a therapist, and I'm not a therapist. I don't have any professional training in like field of mental health or therapy. And it's important to note, like, Buddhist practices are not, I mean, the Buddhist teachings and Buddhist practices, yes, they can help, all of us have some degree of mental sickness, right? Mental illness. That's just normal as a human to have some degree of mental illness. Like anger is a kind of mental illness. Attachment, jealousy, arrogant pride, anxiety, those are all like mild or extreme forms of mental illness, depending on what, And so Buddhism is, yes, it has a lot of techniques to help with kind of ordinary degrees of mental illness. But if one really has like clinical depression, you could say, like Buddhism is not really designed to treat like severe mental illness, like like schizophrenia or severe depression or bipolar disorder or manic depressive. Like there, at some point, some people need professional mental health, like professional help. And because you need like personal attention. Also, like as a Buddhist teacher, my job is not like, yes, I can talk with people one-on-one, have interviews and give advice and things, but I can't really function like a therapist, It's not like I have, I'm in an office 8 hours a day seeing people and giving professional like therapeutic advice. That's not the role of a Buddhist teacher. I know when I was a new student of Buddhism, I kind of felt like, I need a therapist a bit. No, I'd gone to some therapy, I think before I became Buddhist. And I found it helpful. But when I was a new Buddhist, and especially when I first started taking different lamas as my teacher, I really needed at the beginning teachers that at least I could go talk to and sit with and just talk with occasionally. Not like a therapist, but need personal attention. But then gradually I kind of grew out of that. And as you become more familiar with aspects of Buddhist teachings and more confident in your own practice, then you don't feel like you need so much of personal attention. So it's natural to need some personal attention in the practice of Buddhist and Buddhist techniques, but it can be, for some people, they need a lot of personal attention. Where in that case you really need like therapists. You need professional attention. So it's important just to recognize that, because you do see something quite common, and this is a bit of a tangent now, but you do see quite commonly at Buddhist centers people with quite severe mental illness, even taking medication for mental illness, that come to the center, and it feels, because there is a lot of virtue in this environment. There's a really kind people. It's one of the best things about Buddhist centers. You meet really nice people with very nice intention. And so, but some people with severe mental illness start to think, oh, because when I'm here, I feel so good. I don't need my professional help anymore. I can stop, because there's so many downsides to all those psychotropic medications that most people who are on, they really would rather not be taking, right? Which is fully understandable. But then they can start not taking and then start not following the advice of a professional, and then can lead to a lot of problems, like things getting worse. So have to be aware of that danger. Like Buddhist teachings and Buddhist practice are not really designed to help with serious mental illness. But you can, they can, professional mental health assistance and Buddhist practice can complement each other, right? No question. Yeah. Okay, so, I mean, when you talk about mild depression, though, just back to, I'm just kind of thinking, have I mentioned all the antidotes for depression? I think, one, I mean, back when we were talking about doing placement meditation or stabilization meditation and focusing on an object, remember I mentioned there's two main kinds of obstacles. One is laxity, the mind sinking too down, and the other is excitement, the mind being too high in a way. Well, laxity is related to a sort of subtle form of depression. The mind, I mean, depression is a kind of, it's like the mind's being too withdrawn in and being too low, sinking down, right? And there's a sense of darkness, a perception of darkness that goes with that, and a kind of sadness that goes with that. I mean, of course, sadness is not inherently bad. It's a natural part of our human experience. But in the antidotes to laxity are thinking about positive things to lift the mind up. So we can relate that to mild forms of depression also. When our mind feels unhappy and we feel depressed, one thing that can help is think about positive things. Like when we're depressed, we feel unhappy about ourselves. Oftentimes it has to do with our own self-image. We have a very negative self-image, a low opinion of ourselves, a low feeling about ourselves. So reflecting on our own positive qualities, right, can help. Or remembering successes we've had in the past and our ability, remembering successes we've had in the past and using that as evidence that even though we might feel very down about ourselves, that's not inherently who we are. Also remembering the clear nature of the mind, right? The mind is just clear and knowing, and we're changing moment by moment. So however bad I feel now, that's not fixed. Like I can change, and I have a potential for full enlightenment. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion I haven't really gone into, but the clear knowing nature of the mind is the basis for establishing that it's possible for us to gradually eliminate all faults and perfect every positive quality, right? But the Buddha nature, reflecting on our potential, but in a more simple way, just reflecting on successes and experiences of joy and happiness and connection we've had with others in the past. None of us was born depressed, I mean, for the most part, right? It's usually something that happens in our teenage years or as a young adult or sometime in our adult life. But remembering happy times in the past and how that came about, and then using that as evidence that we have that potential now, right? So, and we're changing moment by moment, so we can change. That can help. And then thinking about other things that uplift our mind, how, like, so often we forget how fortunate we are, especially in a very developed country like we're in, like, how much access we have access to education, how other people in our lives that are supportive of us, and think about, these positive things we have in our life, whatever, if we have a roof over our head, we have clothes to wear, we have easy access to food. Like sometimes I see, I've been living in India like a long time. In India, you go to like, yeah, some places you see people so down and out. And here, there are people really down and out in America too, no question. But oftentimes it's more connected with drug abuse, which is usually, people usually turn to drug and alcohol because of mental health issues, that they don't know how to deal with or don't have resources another way. But yeah, in India, there's so many less resources available, people with real severe mental illness. Yeah. So however bad we're feeling, we can look at other people who are worse off, and then that can, we can be grateful for what we have, right? So, of course, but any of this kind of advice, if you're really in the grip of like deep depression, it can all sound kind of nice, but trite and not particularly helpful. So yeah, in that case, need, serious help. But for most of us, when we deal with mild depression, these kind of ways of thinking can help. Being grateful for what we have, recognizing we're not the only one in that situation, trying to connect with others, going outside, connecting with animals or other people. All those things can help. Okay, we only have a few minutes left, so there's not really time to do meditation. So if there's any questions or comments, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Geshe, about how just there's people in the world who are so much worse off than us. The other day, I was watching something on YouTube about Chennai and how the temperatures there from climate change, how it's so boiling hot. Like, I mean, it's going up to like 52 degrees Celsius. And last night, I was so grateful when I opened my window in the evening before I went to bed, and this cool breeze came in. And one of the things that they are having in Chennai is that the temperature doesn't drop even at night. So people's bodies can't cool down before the next day's heat sets in again. And there's so much concern about, what's going to happen to those people. So people are actually going to lie out on the beach to sleep at night. But even at the beach, the temperature isn't dropping anymore. And so there's like real concern there. And so just to even experience cool breeze is something that we can be so grateful for.
Yeah.
So I wanted to mention when I'm feeling low, it helps to go outside. If it's a bright sunny day, it lifts up the mood instantly. So that works pretty well. The other question I had was in our daily practice. So we have placement meditation and we have analytical. So how should we start with placement and then practice one of the analytical meditations? Suppose I'm doing it for like 10-15 minutes initially. So how should I break it up?
Yeah. So start with placement meditation just in order to focus one's attention. And I would, if you're practicing for 10 minutes, for about, it depends. If you're new to practicing meditation, then generally our mind tends to be quite distracted. We easily are distracted. So it can be helpful just to spend maybe half the time, 5 minutes doing placement meditation, just to try to build up that sort of mental muscle of being able to focus on one object. And then half the time do analytical meditation. And then as you can extend the meditation session for longer, then also it's just kind of, there's not one formula that fits all. If you really like placement meditation, you find it really helpful just to watch your breath, then you can do more of that, right? But if you don't find placement meditation that helpful, then at least spend, a quarter to a third of the time focusing your attention and do analytical meditation if you find that more helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. But then when you're doing analytical meditation, though, it's important to be aware of, when you're thinking about an issue or generating a certain attitude, when you especially when you're thinking about a question, when you come to a specific insight, stay with that.
Okay.
Then practice placement meditation, where you're just focusing on that experience and trying to fully be aware of that insight that you've had, so that you don't forget it later on. You want to fully experience it. So then you practice placement meditation, but then the power of that experience fades, and then you go back to the analytical meditation you were doing. So you alternate between them like that.
Thank you.
Maybe if there's any questions from online or comments, otherwise we will dedicate.
I just want to say quickly your suggestion about I realized that it was exactly what you said, that focusing on meditating, watching my mind, it's just more subtle. So it's like I could do one or the other, but when I was trying to do both a little bit, I was having a really hard time. And I think because one was so much more tactile, it was just easier and maybe more fun for me to do. And the other was a little bit more elusive. So anyway, I am going to keep playing around with it, but I think it's so helpful, actually, helpful for me to stay in the moment, watch my mind, and stay with my breath. It helps me stay in the moment. So I like that suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that thing of leaving the breath kind of in the background, but still being aware of it as an anchor is because, yeah, it's so difficult to watch the mind because it's so much more subtle. Then if we just observe the mind, we easily like lose track of what we're trying to observe, right? We easily kind of feel a bit disconnected. Whereas if you have the breath in the background, because it is more kind of a more grounded object, then you feel more grounded, right? You kind of more stay within what you're doing, right? Yeah.
I would you for
Please,
making
yeah.
this very accessible, particularly for someone who's fairly new to this. I mean, just being able to have really helpful, practical examples, and it's been hugely useful and helpful to me. Thank you.
Oh, good. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, also, I think all the videos from these sessions will be available on YouTube.
Okay.
They're public. So I just found out today at lunchtime. So yeah, if you want to look again in the future or refer someone else, there's, I don't know, Ocean of Compassion as a channel. Yeah. Is it under, you search for Ocean of Compassion on YouTube? Yeah. And Bay will, yeah.
Yeah, I will send out the link to everyone who registered. But for this weekend, once it's published, it will be available to public as well.
Mm. Okay, let's just dedicate briefly in the minute we have left now. Yeah, we end at 4. Yeah, so think of all the positive things we've done since Friday evening, beginning of the session until now. I feel like it's really been worthwhile. You know, for me, it's always helpful to go through this kind of basic meditation technique again and think about, you know, how it can be useful, how to begin, how to set up a practice, and then how to actually use different meditation techniques to work with, you know, real problems we face in our lives. So yeah, I hope whatever you found helpful that you can remember and build on in the future, make use of. And whatever parts you found, you know, confusing or a bit too much, or then it's okay. Just leave that. You know, no need to fret about those things. That's natural. But we can rejoice in our own, one's own effort, one's own made, with the positive motivation and all the effort one's put in, listening and thinking about things, meditating. So we can rejoice in all that, think how wonderful it is. And then all the others in the course that we've gotten to know a little bit, we can rejoice in all of their, the positive energy they've created as well. And then think of all the other, you know, the other people around the world doing things in the present, in the past, you know, doing that have made this this course possible. I mean, everything that I've been explaining, it all comes from Shakyamuni Buddha and has been, you know, refined and clarified by other latest Buddhist masters in ancient India and Tibet, and then my own teachers of, you know, this life, His Holiness Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and others. And then, you know, all of that in my whole learning process, you know, and all of our learning process is enabled by so many other people, our parents, our friends, our employers, our, you know, clients or customers, and, you know, countless people that provide us with food and clothing and shelter and water, electricity. You know, so there's countless sentient beings that have contributed to our ability to participate in this course and do anything positive. So we can rejoice in all the positive things people do directly and indirectly. So this ocean of positive energy gathered together, just to dedicate briefly. In short, may we and countless others gain more wisdom and skill in working with our own minds, and thereby be able to reduce suffering and the causes of suffering in our lives and in the lives of others. and to create more causes of happiness, or bring more well-being and happiness and the causes of well-being and happiness in our own lives and the lives of others. So in short, may all beings be free from every form of suffering, especially hunger, thirst, violence, conflict, abuse, and depression, and all the other forms of suffering we've discussed. And may all beings have every form of well-being and happiness up to full enlightenment. And may spiritual teachings like those we've been engaged with, this course, may they continue to exist in the world for a long time and flourish. And may all have access to those now and in the future. And then especially the Dharma Center, this Buddhist center hosting this course, Ocean of Compassion Buddhist Center here in Campbell. May it be free of every obstacle and have every supportive condition to offering programs like this and others to all who are interested. And may anyone who volunteers or supports the center in any way, or comes to the center, or hears about the center, has any kind of connection with the center whatsoever, may that only benefit them and not cause the slightest harm. And then bring to mind any other prayers or dedications that you'd like to make. Especially any individuals you'd like, or causes you'd like to pray for. So may all those virtuous prayers be accomplished in accordance with your intention. Okay, thank you all. And we'll leave for there. And yeah, hope to see you again sometime.
Thank you.
Thank you.